All right. So there's a couple things I want you to keep in mind as we talk about the Revolutionary War. We often really tend to oversimplify it, but I want you to think about the fact that one, this is a civil war. Um, because the colonists are still British and they are revolting against the British government. It is a civil war. Second of all, it is a global conflict because we do see where French is involved in this war. So, one, it's civil, and two, it is global. And this war is primarily caused over a difference of perspective. So, the British felt that logically the colonists should help pay for their portion of the 7-Year War. And yes, the 7-Year War was a global conflict, but a lot of it happened in the colonies, and a lot of that happened because the colonists would not stay where they were supposed to stay. The British came to their aid, and the British really did look at this as therefore the colonists should help pay for that. The colonists, though, felt that they were, and this is interesting. I want you to think about the play on terms here. The colonists felt that they were becoming slaves to the English crown and that they were oppressed. And this is really interesting. I mean, if you've been keeping up with your reading, you have seen that what the large proportion of actual slaves in the colonies, what that actually is at this point. So it's an interesting term that they use there. So they feel that they are slaves to the crown. So the one thing also to think about is this word treason. Treason is the crime of betraying one's country, especially by attempting to kill the sovereign or overthrow the government. So as we talked last week about the Sons of Liberty and the Daughters of Liberty, and the Sons of Liberty do get pretty, they are actually hurting people. So you can look at this from the English crown's perspective and say that the colonists are treasonous. So those are kind of some things I want you to think about this week as you're doing your reading, as you're watching the videos and listening to the lectures, and as you're starting to put all those pieces together. So one, it's a civil war. Two, it is a global conflict. Three, I want you to think about, are the colonists treasonous? So the Second Continental Congress, we're looking at people like John Adams, John Hancock, Lyman Hall of Georgia. Those are some of the people who meet with the second, as part of the Second Continental Congress. And what their job is to do here is to prepare for war, but also to continue to seek peace. So your primary source document last week was looking at how some of those in England wanted to keep peace. The militias, though, the Second Continental Congress, they are encouraging them to train and gather supplies. They send another petition to the king, and William Penn delivered this petition to the king, and the king refused to see him. And on August 23rd, 1775, the king declares that America has an open and avowed rebellion, which in other terms could be considered treasonous. Really, at this point, he's trying to call their bluff here. And keep in mind, England has a long-standing history of being just a great naval power. And if you look at all the battles that they had been in randomly up to this point, who in their right mind is going to take on England? Especially a bunch of colonists who can't control themselves anyways. I mean, if you're looking at this from the crown's point of view. The French are well established and cannot defeat England. So he's kind of trying to call their bluff here. And he thinks that by doing this, then they'll back down. And instead, they create the Continental Army and they appoint Washington as commander-in-chief. Now, if we think back to, I told you a few weeks ago, that when you're looking at the colonies, you have to keep them all separated in their own space, in their own time. Don't try to unite them at this point. or, at that point that we were discussing. And this is still a little bit of an issue because these colonies are not united. So the Second Continental Congress really has a lot to overcome still on uniting these colonies. And the king is going to look at this and say, nah, good luck with this. You're so unorganized, you can't pull this together. And the colonies are divided even more so than just in space and time. I mean, we're looking at many in the open colonies depended on Britain for trade. Pennsylvania, Maryland, New York, South Carolina, they hold out for a bit. They don't want to just immediately jump in and join this revolution. But there are some things that will contribute to, I'm sorry, I'm looking real quick. There are some things that will contribute to this joining of them together. And one of those things is Thomas Paine's Common Sense. And this comes out in January 1776. And what he argues for in Common Sense, if you've not read it at this point, is for a strong defense of American independence from England. It sold more than 150,000 copies in a few weeks. John Adams actually sent a copy to Abigail Adams for her to read. And Thomas Paine traveled with the Continental Army. He wasn't much of a soldier, but he continued writing. And so he wrote things like the American Crisis of 1776 to 1783. And that really did kind of inspire the soldiers. And also, there is the second thing that kind of started uniting the colonists and saying, yeah, let's go ahead and move forward with this Declaration of Independence, is this prospect of an alliance with France. Now, remember that France is always looking to fight England. And France was willing to provide military supplies and naval power if assured that the United States would separate from England. So they devised the Declaration of Independence, and we're going to come back to the Articles of Confederation in a few minutes. But they devised the Declaration of Independence, which is the founding document, and what the Declaration's main purpose is to announce to the entire globe that the colonies have separated from England. They appointed a committee to explore the independence of the colonies from Great Britain on June 7th, 1776. And that committee consisted of people like John Adams, Benjamin Franklin, Robert Livingston. They appointed Thomas Jefferson to draft a formal declaration. And on July 2nd, 1776, Congress voted and approved, and they approved the Declaration of Independence on July 4th, 1776. So today, when we celebrate July 4th, we're not celebrating the initial, this is what we're going to do. On July 4th, we celebrate the public proclamation of the principles of independence, not the actual act thereof, but that public proclamation of it. So, sorry, guys. So the Declaration consists of three parts. One of those is the preamble, and the preamble is just, excuse me, it just justifies the Revolutionary War. So if you're looking at this, at the Declaration, which I have put up, and you're keeping notes, that first part is the justification of the Revolutionary War. The second part is 17 charges against the king. In other words, the why. So they've justified what they're doing, and now they're putting the why for what they're doing. And some of those phrases are like long train of abuses, that the king that it's absolute tyranny, that the king had interfered with the colonists' rights, their pursuit of happiness, their liberty, and their life. And in the conclusion, they mentioned that the king was unfit to be the ruler of a free people, that he was deaf to their pleas of justice and humanity, and the Congress was forced to proclaim the colonies free and independent states, and the delegates pledged to each other their lives, fortunes, and sacred honor to declare independence from the king. So the Declaration is really this announcement to the world: here's what we're doing, here's why we're doing it, and here's our grievances against the king. So that is what this declaration actually is. Now, they also had the Articles of Confederation. Oh, and my screen froze. All right, we'll hit this in the second one.